More men in America are completely alone than at any point in modern history. And most of them have no idea that it is killing them. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly what you can do about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom right here on the Lions of Liberty podcast network. Great to have you with me today. I have a solo show, no guest today, but I'm going to be talking about a really important topic and a topic that's important to me as a man. And I'll be talking about really not only what I've seen in the world today, but some research that is out there about this epidemic with men today, the loneliness crisis, especially impacting the younger generations. And I'll get to that in just a moment. Before I do that, I got to tell you about my favorite coffee, Fox and Sons Coffee owner and fellow entrepreneur Stephen Fox. He is doing great things with Fox and Sons. Delicious choices of coffee. If you like whole bean, if you like ground coffee, if you use a drip, if you use French press, whatever you need, you can get it at Fox and Sons Coffee. If you like bold, if you like mild coffee, if you like espresso, it's all there. Many different varieties. Go and check it out for yourself. You can go to foxandsons.com. That's FOXNSONS.com. Get 15% off an order of $40 or more by using promo code John. That's JOHN at checkout, and go get some coffee. And, you know, I start every morning with a cup of coffee. It's a ritual that has become a part of my life. And I don't need the coffee as much as I did in years past. There were times in my life when the only way that I could get through my day was with coffee, was with drinking coffee constantly, needing that caffeine, needing that hit to get through the day. Now, on previous podcasts, I've talked about how I've been able to transform my health and really do a 180. And a big benefit of that is I don't need as much coffee anymore, but I still enjoy the taste. And I think back to really when I was single and when I was living in California, and I was not only really addicted to coffee then, I was also addicted to energy drinks. And at that time in my life, in my early 20s, living in California, I had gotten a job out there. Well, out of college, went to Penn State. First, went to Georgia with the company that I was hired with out of college, and lived there for about a year. And the nice thing about living when I was in Georgia is I had some family close. My sister was about an hour and a half away. I was like 45 minutes south of Atlanta. She was 45 minutes north of Atlanta. So I would go up there every other weekend and visit. And it was around that time that my first niece was born. So it was cool to be there for that and to have family around so close to me as I transitioned out of college life, that lifestyle into the real world. It was great to have family there, to be able to stay grounded. When I went out to California, I had no family there. I did have friends, but not in the immediate vicinity, right? Not in the town that I was living in, the place where I was working. I was working about an hour east of Los Angeles. I lived in Riverside, Riverside, California, and worked in Colton, California, a very industrial area, something that I was not familiar with at all. That type of area was not like what I grew up in. And California as a whole is very different than where I grew up in Pittsburgh, and also very different than Atlanta as well. But I lived in Riverside. I had some friends down in the beach towns, in Venice. That's where Brian and Mark were living at the time, so I would go down and visit them on some weekends. I also had a friend from high school, good friend of mine that was working on a resort out in Palm Springs, so I would go there on some weekends. But during the week, when I was home every night, would come home after work and make my own dinner or frozen pizza or whatever. Sometimes I would cook, but I didn't cook as much back then. And I was single, and I just think back to just how tough that was. Those, the Monday to to Friday, that point in my life when I really didn't have anyone else, and I just think back to just how lonely that was to waking up and not having a you know now I wake up and my wife's there, my daughter's there, and there's things to do. It's busy. We have friends, and there's all these different things that I do and different commitments that I have. And, of course, at that point in my life in California, I had work, but that was really all I had was work. I would go to work and I had people I knew at work, but they weren't my friends. I didn't really relate to them. Most of them were much older than me. We didn't have similar values or a lot of things in common. And it was a really tough time. And I struggled with a lot of different things. I struggled with drinking almost every single night. I did not eat well. I was abusing my body. I was not sleeping enough, and I think of that, um, and it correlates a lot to what I think a lot of men are going through today. And I also think of the time during when COVID happened, and I was lucky enough when COVID and really the lockdowns were the worst part of COVID. It wasn't actually the virus itself; it was the response to the virus that was the major problem. And lucky enough for me, I had a family then to focus on. But a lot of people, a lot of men out there and women, but this podcast today is focused on men and the loneliest loneliness epidemic for men. And I'm focusing on that because I think I understand it pretty well. This isn't to discount what women are going through today. I think they face their own struggles and their own dilemmas and problems that they have to overcome in this modern world. And I am very much, of course, plugged into that as well. And I care very much about women as well, as I have a wife and I have a daughter. So, um, by the topic of today's show, what I'm talking about today, don't take it that I don't care about women because I do. But for today's show, I will be focusing on really what I see as a massive problem with the male population, especially young men. And when I think of COVID and I think of what happened with a lot of men is they just became totally isolated, working remotely, playing video games, spending all their time online, and that led to really a lot of emptiness, a lot of drift. Um, Really nothing to keep them grounded. In today's world, when people go to college, men and women alike, oftentimes they move away. Like I moved away to California, to Georgia. Um, and when they move away from their family. They move away from that familiar environment that they grew up in. And there's positives and negatives to that, but I think there can be a lot more negatives to it if that element, that grounding, that foundation is not built up in another way. And I think COVID really exposed that. And I think a lot of people had that happen. A lot of young men had that happen to them during COVID, where they were just inundated with loneliness. And the way that they tried to remedy it, the way that they tried to cover it up, was by becoming terminally online. And I think we see that today on Twitter, on X, and all the social media sites as it presents itself, um, really trying to fill that void with an internet community. And I obviously I think the internet can be a great thing, can be a great tool. I also think it can be very dangerous, and I think there's people out there obviously who are taking advantage of this of this loneliness epidemic in the male community. And there's an audience out there. There's a hunger of for young men out there looking for community, looking for purpose. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people today, a lot of men today, are looking in the wrong places. So a lot of men are being sucked into these internet movements. In with Nick Fuentes, who, I will give it to Fuentes. He's an entertainer. He's a podcaster, YouTuber. He's said some terrible things, of course. He also has some, I think, pretty pertinent views. We'll say. I don't necessarily like the way that he presents everything, but I will hand it to him. I think he is a top you know, top 1% entertainer. There's not many people like him out there. He's able to command attention. He's able to build a following. But the unfortunate thing is, I think the way that he is approaching things, he is a single man. He's a man who's not married. He doesn't have a family, and he's not necessarily pointing men to that as something that they should desire. And I think that is something that men should desire. And maybe it's not right for every man out there to have a family. There's a lot of men out there who probably are maybe not capable of reproducing and having a family. Maybe they don't with the things going on with fertility, maybe they are not able to. And that's not a knock on them in any way whatsoever. I think that's just reality of a part of the situation. There's also other groups out there on the internet other than Fuentes who are courting this audience of young men. There's wild conspiracy theories out there, and I'm not anti-conspiracy theory, but I think it can be dangerous when literally everything that happens in the world, if you automatically jump to the conspiracy, if you automatically jump to, you know, things are not at all as they seem, and it's all reorganized behind the scenes and being presented to you in a different way. I think that can be dangerous because if you think reality on its face is not real, it's going to be really tough to find contentment in this world. And I think it's dangerous. I think the conspiracy communities out there are also taking advantage of this desire from young men to find community, to find a place where they belong. And you have the same thing with the younger crowd now, with people like clavicular, with the looks maxing and the mogging or whatever the heck that means. Where really that's just a self-centered thing, wherein rather than becoming a man and leading, or either leading a business or leading a family and taking that accountability on yourself and leading in a humble way, it's saying, in a self-centered way, that I am the greatest, everyone else sucks, look at me. When you have in the for someone like clavicular with this looks maxing, they were literally damaged their own body physically and also biologically in order to make themselves appear that they are, the ultimate alpha male, which I think is extremely dangerous and is probably the most dangerous of the three that I talked about. The other two being Fuentes and the conspiracy group. But and there's also a lot of people getting sucked into on the other side of things, on the feminism side, on the progressive side, a lot of men apologizing for being men. And there's been sort of this false dichotomy set up where either you got to be on this Fuentes conspiracy looks maxing side of things, or you got to be on the side where you're apologizing for being a man. And I just think that's not true. That's not reality. I think there is a third path that is far less traveled. That's a path of being a real man. It's a path of being accountable, of being humble, of serving others, of protecting the vulnerable, and doing hard things, doing difficult tasks, doing things that make you uncomfortable. And I think that third path is the way that men should be looking towards, is the path that men should be seeking. So let's get into some of really the data and statistics around this loneliness epidemic with men and try to dig into what is actually happening here. So I think it's important to identify the problem, make sure we're all aligned that there is definitely a problem, and then talk about what potential solutions could be. And I'm not talking about solutions from the government or solutions from some institution. I'm talking about solutions that you can actually do today, this week, that you can implement in your life right now. So that's what I want you to take away from today's episode. And this should be a short episode. I want to keep it less than a half hour. So we're going to keep right on moving along. So, over half of men today say that they feel like nobody really knows them. Loneliness is at an all-time high. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, and we'll get into a little bit later, but that alone is just a wild statistic. Half of men are saying that nobody really knows them. That's including a wife doesn't know them, a spouse, a girlfriend, other men in their friend group don't really know them. That's a little scary if you feel like nobody knows you. You feel like nobody cares about you. Um, that's a recipe for disaster. It certainly is. And many men feel like the world is out to get them. And I think in many ways the world is out to get them. The way that the world has been constructed, the way that governments have intervened in some ways, the way that culture and society have been molded to look down upon men. I mean, you have corporations that literally will pay more for women referrals to be hired than they will for men. In higher education, uh, 60% of college degrees go to women. Women get more institutional support. They get more scholarships. They're more likely to get admitted to college. Then you look at family courts. If you're lucky enough to find a spouse, get married, and or have a child, um, women get more support. The mothers most often receive primary custody. Men almost always face a higher financial obligation. So men look at that and say, well, why would I even find a spouse and have a child when it's just going to be used as a club to beat me over the head with? On dating apps, women rate 80% of men as being physically unattractive, maybe even higher than that. 80 to 90% of men as being physically unattractive. So you have this top tier, top 10 to 20% of men that on these dating apps are getting all of the women, and the bottom 80% are getting nothing, essentially. Lucky enough for me, like I don't have any experience using dating apps. I met my wife back in 2009. That was before dating apps were even a thing. So I can't really relate to that personally. But that's a scary thing, and I think anybody who looks at that, looks at those numbers, it's not sustainable. Number one, and number two, it's just downright mean, man. And I mean, I'm not saying this to like really say anything negative about women per se, but for the women out there listening to this and watching this, or if you're a man and you have a daughter, I think we have to do a better job of creating environments where men and women are able to date, and it's not just boiled down just to looks. Like that's crazy. And like growing up dating, and when I met my wife, um it didn't just come down to looks. It comes down to personality. It comes down to being funny, and it comes down to just chemistry and getting along with someone and being able to carry a conversation. And with all of that thrown out the window, and not even taking into account when a woman is looking for a relationship, if they're using a dating app, if they're just basing it entirely on the way that a man looks. If you can't see the danger in that, if you can't say where that leads, then I don't know. I don't think you're a serious person. Along with that, so the cultural narratives against men, toxic masculinity. There's increased scrutiny just around regular male behavior. just boys being boys, men being men. Um, Men are not allowed to just act as men in the workplace or when they're out and about. It's crazy how the culture has shifted, and young men growing up in this don't understand that it hasn't always been this way, that there's been a massive shift that's been fueled by things like Me Too. And now today, men are afraid to approach women out in public because they're afraid of being turned down, number one, but they're also afraid of being labeled as a creep or labeled as, being aggressive or something like that. Where in the past, in all of history before this, it wasn't that way. And once again, I'll just reiterate this isn't to say that there's not bad men out there who are aggressive and do creepy things. There certainly are. But we want to be able to isolate those things and point those things out and not lump every single man in as being creepy or aggressive if they approach a woman, unless they're super attractive, right? Then it's okay to approach a woman. But it's not sustainable, and it's not a dating culture that's going to work for humanity. So I don't know where it leads, to be honest with you. It doesn't lead to a good outcome. And then you take into account just men and mental health. Men have significantly high suicide rates than females, more drug overdoses. Men are obviously much more likely to seek help in any way for mental health issues. And then when it comes to just physical risk of being a man, you look at just accidents in general. Men behave more in a more risky way, so they're more prone to accidents. They take on more dangerous occupations because physically they can do it, and women can't do it. If you're talking about fishing or being a firefighter or all of these different things, only men are able to physically perform a lot of these jobs, and men are much more likely to be victims of violent crime. And that's just reality. That's not like something that we can change. That this last point here, it's I think it's a reality that's important for everyone to recognize. So the old social order that we knew up until, I don't know, 2010, 2015, um, that's gone. It's in a lot of ways it's been outright destroyed. So there used to be, places where men could come together and talk to each other. Iron sharpens iron, be it in church, the military, local, neighborhood events, local clubs. There was opportunities for brotherhood. Recently we were visiting with my wife's uncle, and he was talking about growing up and just how the world that he grew up in, just how special it was, and the different things that his father, my wife's grandfather, that he would do during the week. He would have a bowling league that he would go to. He would go to play cards with his buddies, and it was you're raised in a way that you were surrounded by male camaraderie, and it was welcomed, right? And that's gone away in a lot of ways, and it's frowned upon in a lot of ways. It's viewed as being, toxic or it's just not something that modern day society values in any way whatsoever. But it's important. It's important to men to have that outlet, to be able to let down your guard and have fun and just interact and relax around a group of other guys. And for a long time, I think work filled the gap for a lot of men. They were still able to, go to the workplace, be it, if you're working a more, if you're working a construction job, a more physical job, manual labor, or if you're working in an office, there were still opportunities for camaraderie, for brotherhood, in that, especially working on a project, on a construction project, working towards a higher task to be able to look to that and say, yeah, we built that. Yeah, that's a job that this brotherhood did, and more that is under attack, and it's not there anymore. That identity in work, which I don't think it's healthy in the first place to have all of your identity wrapped up in your job. I talked about that on a recent episode with Jeremy Stallnecker. Um, as a Christian, your identity should be in Christ, and that is the only secure identity. Otherwise, you are always going to be searching to fill that God-sized hole in your heart with something else. Um, but when it comes to the workplace shift, people like young people today, they're in a job for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years is a long time. Um, it's not even able to be a part of who you are, and you're not able to build up those long-term relationships, those mentorships that I think are so important. And, it's been a struggle for me, honestly, in the workplace, and it's one of the reasons I left corporate America, or maybe corporate America kicked me out. I'm not sure which it is, maybe a little bit of both. Is that being able to find that mentorship? I felt like you had to not be real. You had to not be yourself in order to climb the corporate ladder and identify with the executives and the higher ups who would then give you that promotion. So, I mean, for me, it became something that I just didn't desire anymore. I didn't desire to have a role like that in corporate America where I was where I would even have the opportunity to have that mentorship. Now outside, when I'm working for myself and I'm also, providing services, working for other people in real estate and other things, I have been able to find some mentors, some people that have taught me a lot, especially in the real estate realm. Um, but at the end of the day, today's culture does not approve of male brotherhood, and there's the part of therapy culture that tells men to be vulnerable and but be vulnerable with who? I mean, you don't want to be vulnerable with everybody. Sure, there's certain situations where you can be vulnerable, but if you're walking around being vulnerable all the time, I think that's kind of dangerous to your success in life. So I think there are some ways, um, some things that are some ways that are pointed to as fixes that really don't work. So let's talk about some of those, and then we'll talk about I think what can work. So there's been a large drive. You'll see it on Facebook and on Twitter of these different communities. These male communities, and there's coaches or whatever they call themselves, who will have these paid basically memberships to join these male communities around exercise or around different things like that. And where I do think there is some use to that. Um, I don't think there's real friendship there. And I don't think in a lot of cases there's loyalty there. That's not to say that it can't be found there. And I'm sure some people do find it. But I think for the vast amount of people, that's probably not the answer. Maybe for some it is. Then there's the therapy trap. Um, Therapy, I think the danger with therapy is the people giving the therapy and, the values that they have. Do they align with the values that you have? And if they don't, then I think you could be led down a very destructive path for yourself. And then there's the political tribe substitute, which we talked about with Fuentes and conspiracies and looks maxing and all these different things. Sure, you're joining a community over something that it's like a shared anger or a shared skepticism, and you're pushing back against it. But at the end of the day, what are you really building on? You're not building anything. All you're doing is taking your anger and focusing on someone else. You're not taking accountability for yourself. You're not taking steps to improve yourself. And in the looks maxing case, you might be taking steps to improve your looks and get healthy, but you're doing it in a very self-centered way. You're not doing it in a humbled way. You're not doing it in a way to focus on serving others, which I think is also dangerous. And then there's the busyness cover. There's men out there, um, who just try to fill their life with being busy. And you see a lot of this in the corporate world where people are just busy to be busy. They're just running around to run around. They're just shuffling paper to shuffle paper. And at the end of the day, they might have a wife and kids at home, and they're so focused on remaining busy. And I'm so busy, I'm so busy, I'm doing so many different things, they forget about their family. Or I'm so busy doing so many different things, they forget to get a family. I mean, so that's a big trap as well. And the truth of the matter is, when it comes to loneliness for men, nobody's coming to save you. Nobody. Nobody's coming to save you. No one is coming to rescue you from your isolation, from your busyness, from the social media traps that you've bought into, from the political traps you've bought into. No one's coming to save you. No one's coming to save you from the hours of gaming that you're addicted to doing every night. No one's coming to save you from your porn addiction. You got to save yourself. You have to save yourself, and you have to figure out ways to do that. And I'll give some recommendations here. I don't think this is like a prescription for do these 5 things and you will set yourself free. I'm not gonna sell it like that because I don't think it's that simple. I think it's complicated, and I think it's different for every man, the way you really need to approach this. And I mean, I'll put it right out there right now. I mean, I'm a Christian, and I think for every man that's a big piece of it. But, to be perfectly honest, maybe you're not ready for it, you know? So I'm not gonna force that on you. But if you are somebody out there who is curious about faith, about Christianity, or if you just want to hear my story on how it's transformed my life, because for me, that's what I didn't understand as a Christian growing up, and when I was young and a teenager and in college, I didn't understand the transformative power of Christ in your life. I thought that you kinda had to make yourself perfect before you really committed to Christ. I didn't understand it was the reverse. In Christ, you go to Christ, and Christ transforms you. And as you transform, you grow closer and closer, um, in a closer relationship with Christ. But to get into some of these steps, I think some of them are kinda simple, and they might be uncomfortable, but, I think it's something that if you find yourself in this trap, which I think to a certain degree, all men are in this trap. I mean, myself included. I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm not perfect. I've got problems. I mean, we all have things that we're working through in this crazy social media world that we live in today. And one thing that you can do is calling an old friend, someone you've lost touch with, someone you haven't talked to in years. And I'm not talking about sending an email or a text message or, sending a GIF or GIF, depending how you say it, on Twitter to them. I'm talking about picking up the phone, making a phone call, and just saying what's up and checking in and just being a friend. So many men have forgotten the importance of just being a friend. And it's not only just a give, it's also comes back. It's important to both sides. It's important not only to you to reach out to someone else who maybe they need a friend. You do too, and I think this is important even for people who might have some close friends. I think we become comfortable in our current circumstances, and maybe we forget about the past. We forget about our friends who might have helped us out through difficult times in a different season of life, and we kind of left them in that season of life. Go back this week. Go back and call. Give one of those friends a call. Check in. See what they're doing. See what's new in their life. That's it. That's it. Do that one thing. Couple other things. So try to create a recurring ritual um, with another guy, with another friend. Something that you can do either weekly, going for coffee, going to the gym, having a poker night with a group of dudes, a Bible study. Um, One thing that has helped me tremendously is I joined a Bible study. It's called Community Bible Study, CBS. It's all throughout the world. You can go to Community Bible Study, just Google Community Bible Study, and I almost guarantee you can find one within a half hour of of where you live. The way that they're um, set up in different ways, but the one that I go to, it's a large group, but it's also split up into a core, there's core groups. So there's a male Bible study, there's a female Bible study, there's a couples Bible study. So there's different groups that you could opt into. I'm in a male Bible study there. My wife and I also just recently joined a couples small group Bible study. But I think it's important if you're a Christian. I think it's important to have that time around other men, reading through the Word of God and sharing with each other. And it's really something that it can't be replaced, and you don't realize how much you needed it until you actually have it in your life. The other thing which I think is important and something I need to do more of, I feel like doing hard things with other men, running a 5K, um, building something, just picking. I mean, picking something out that you can do together with other dudes to have an experience, something you can look back on and say, "That was freaking awesome when we did that." Um, Number 4, when you are talking with a guy, with a friend who's going through something difficult, um, with men, it's hard to share. I have a hard time sharing when things happen in my life. I don't think that's unique to me. I think that's normal for men. Um, but I think it's important when you are having one of those conversations and you can sense it. You can sense that your buddy has something that they need to get off their chest, but they're holding back. Share something about yourself first. Go first. Put it out there. Share something you're struggling with. Put that out there first to open up the door for them to share their struggle. And I mean, in that, I mean, it's hard to even explain when that happens. Just the relief, when you're able to share that with someone else, and what can grow out of that as well. And then 5, anchor into something bigger than a group. So this is why I think this doesn't really work. I was talking about these online memberships, or a lot of them are based around working out or things like that. I think it needs to be bigger than that. So, and this is something that I probably need in my life as well, more so, is that I think men need to have something that's bigger than them, that they're working on building, be it around faith, be it around a mission, be it around raising kids. Um, and a piece of this is becoming a father, right? Having something bigger, that's a family, protecting a family, protecting something bigger than just you. So, I think having I can't just tell you to go out, go start a family. That'll fix your problems. I think it can. I think if you're not ready, though, it can create a lot more problems. So, um, if you're ready to start a family, start a family. That's something bigger than you. Um, but when you have a group, when you have a community of men, be it a Bible study or a small group or whatever. Um, I think having to focus on something bigger that you're driving towards, helping others, that's an accelerator. I mean, that's something where you can grow exponentially fast, um, as a group. And I mean, that's something that I think we were really lacking in society today, and something that 50 years ago, 100 years ago, was a lot more common than it is today. You had a lot of these different, like, but brotherhoods or whatever, neighborhood groups, people getting together, and that's totally gone away. people getting together to clean up the neighborhood or build a playground or things like that. And that's almost completely evaporated from the fabric of society. So something to think about. Like I said, I'll give you some ideas for some actionable things that you can do. This isn't like do this and you'll be happy. I think it's an ongoing battle. Uh, but I think what I wanted to really drill home today is that yes, there's a problem. Yes, it's cultural, it's political. Um, I think men are definitely being singled out and pointed to as being toxic just for regular male behavior, um, from academia to corporations. I don't think that's going to change. I think we as men, like I said, no one's coming to save us. You got to take it on yourself and make changes in your own life to become a humble person, an unselfish person, someone who serves others, someone who protects the vulnerable, and somebody who looks out for other guys, and someone who is a leader. And if we get more of that, if we get more accountability, if we get more self ownership, less cockiness, less pride, um, I think that would just do so much for this country because this country is entirely lacking strong male leadership. There's so many people growing up today, so many young people who just don't see role models of strong young men anymore. They see role models on the left of men who just apologize for being men. They see role models on the right who are cocky, arrogant assholes, and they don't see an actual man who is living life the way that men should be living life. So that is what I have for this week. Hopefully you took something from it today. If you're a man or if you're a woman, maybe you're a woman, a mother who's raising a little man. And it's tough. It's not easy, and I don't think it's going to get easier. But like I said, it starts with you. It starts with if you're a man watching, listening to this, it starts with you looking in the mirror and taking action to make yourself better. Taking action then to help other men as well. So that's all I got for this week. Thank you so much for watching, listening. If you like this show, if you like what we do here on Lions of Liberty, please do join us on Patreon or Locals and become a member of our Politics crew. Of course, that is a spinoff of our politics podcast that we have, which is really gaining in popularity. So check that out if you'd like to. You can get all of those episodes on our Lions of Liberty network. Of course, I have my solo Finding Freedom feed, which is growing as well. You can get just my content there. Either way, I appreciate you. We appreciate you supporting us, sharing the show, um, going on to your podcast app and giving us 5 stars and a nice review. We appreciate all of it. And thank you for listening once again. I'll see you all next week. This is John Odermatt signing off. Keep moving.